Welcome back to Ayubowan Sri Lanka. We are with Professor Rajiva Wijesinha today. Rajiva, we were discussing about Geneva, and then you were moving on to elections and then Ranil Wickremesinghe.
No, this was one thing that happened in 2002. If you remember, in the discussions, Professor Pires announced that elections would be held to local bodies in the East. Suddenly this matter was forgotten. And I was at a Liberal meeting when I mentioned this and said, Professor Pires had let us down. And in all fairness, Austin Fernando, who was there as well and who was the Secretary of Defense at the time, came to me afterwards and said, you mustn't blame GL. He wanted elections. He was actually very keen on elections. But he was overruled by the Prime Minister. Yes. And I said, why? The LTT didn't want them. So he said the LTT didn't want elections. And Ranil, I suppose, coming from the Jayawardene, theory of democracy, was quite happy to agree with the LTT not to have elections. But poor GL Pires, who had argued for this point, suddenly found the rug taken out from under his feet. So I'm afraid there's a tradition which I was really sorry to see the EU supporting to the extent of calling in our ambassador. That was shabby.
Now you you said that NGOs and INGOs, they gave wrong information. We are aware of it, but you're also known as a terrible NGO basher. Why?
Well, I think that's very unfair. Apparently the NGOs are now saying how nice I am. I'm really a very nice person.
They're saying it now.
They're saying it now. But I was saying this very clearly. In all fairness, I only attacked NGOs that attacked us, because I felt we had to defend, and I told someone, I haven't changed at all. My point was clear. If you were trying to stop us defeating the LTT, we had to take you on head on. But having said that, we need to appreciate the good work. Now we don't have that danger, and therefore we must try to understand you better. Many NGOs do a very good job, but unfortunately a few of them thought they ruled the country. One of the problems for this was that in the period 2002 to 3, with the influx of money after the peace accord, a lot of NGOs flooded in, and they were allowed to do things. Ranil didn't have much faith in government. He felt that the public sector wasn't very good. It certainly has its flaws, but as this whole thing proved, people like the Commissioner General of Essential Services, who kept Jaffna supplied when the whole international community feared to go there. The ICRC had to withdraw its ship. Mr. Devaratna, together with the people in Jaffna and the army people there, they kept Jaffna fed. So our public service can do a fantastic job, but of course it needs to improve. We all know that. Our system,
we have to work together.
Yeah, systems from the British times that we still adhere to in the time when you had a small civil service need to be changed, but we stick with the same old AR and FR. Unfortunately, some NGOs at that stage took on a determining role. After the tsunami, it got worse when money flooded in. The local NGOs were shut out. The overheads increased. I found when I became Secretary of the Ministry, there's something called the CHAP. And until then, the UN thought it ran the CHAP. And they tried to tell me these are regulations. I read my regulations. I said, no, the IASC exists in New York. Your country team has no power. They wanted to say the IASC in Sri Lanka, set up according to Mr. Palihakara by a particular person in the UN who was not very pro-Sri Lanka, that thought it ran the CHAP. We said it doesn't. Government runs the CHAP together with the UN. UN is a partner of government. They told me this year you succeeded. I said I didn't succeed at all. I succeeded in getting you to agree that this is the way. But this year, especially because of the work of the Presidential Task Force, which has been fantastic, people have realized you must work with government. We are very happy to have assistance, but it must be accountable. I'm trying to get the accounts. I couldn't get any accounts for up to 2008. The 2009 CHAP accounts are better, but they're still not perfect. There are NGOs that refuse to report to the UN, saying they raised the money. I said that's not a problem, but they have to report to somebody. We must have accountability and transparency, because millions of dollars were given for the Sri Lankan people, and if it is not used for the Sri Lankan people, it is our responsibility.
Rajiva, this is my final question to you today. You, as the head of the Peace Secretariat, worked very closely with President Mahinda Rajapaksa, and now during and trying to bring in peace, and now you, as the Secretary of the Ministry of Human Rights and Disaster Management, you play a very important role and you work very closely with him. Can you tell me, or can you tell our viewers, what are the most endearing qualities of President Mahinda Rajapaksa?
He's always willing to listen. If you call, some people never return your calls. He always does. He discusses issues seriously. When he disagrees, he says so. And of course, he's not only is he the boss, he has a tremendous awareness of political reality. But at the same time, he knows that he's surrounded by a lot of people, some of whom will give him advice that may not work out. And that's why he's prepared to listen. But the second factor is he is utterly pluralistic. I think one factor that people have to absolutely recognize is the efforts he's making to learn Tamil. I know some people think this is cosmetic, but he's the first leader of our country who's making this effort tremendously, and people appreciate it. One of our biggest problems was language. We did not do correctly by the minorities in terms of language for many years. Even though the constitutional provision was changed in 87, it was not implemented until people like Dugunasekar actually started to have public sector reforms. The younger generation in schools, the younger generation in, and that is tribute to Chandrika Kumaratunga, she changed language policy in the 90s to introduce Tamil and English in a proper place in schools. President Rajapaksa has gone, he's more efficient, so he's moving it forward more quickly. But Dugunasekar has made in the public sector, and the younger people, both in my staff and in schools, are willing to learn. But, sometimes older people like me think, we're too old to learn new languages, just as I thought I was too old to learn computing. The President has made this effort, and I think that is a wonderful symbol of a tremendous sense of pluralism. And that is what this country needs now.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Rajiva, with Ayubowan Sri Lanka, and we hope to meet up with you again and close to the election and discuss the developments, especially regarding IDPs and human rights. And we'll be back with you tomorrow morning, same time. Goodbye.